Back live with you tonight, and thanks for staying on. We now take a look at the Phala Phala report's political fallout further and ask how the South African public should understand its impact on its understanding of constitutionalism, governance and accountability. Joining us now to do so, governance expert Dr. Zwelinzima Ndevu from the School of Public Leadership at the University of Stellenbosch, and constitutional law expert advocate Paul Hoffman. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us today. Let's start at the end of it, and then we'll work our way a little bit back. What we're hearing coming out tonight following the panel's report, finding that the president may have violated some sections of the constitutions and sections of the law in putting himself in a compromised position as far as conflict of interest is concerned and his understanding of what paid work is. We are hearing today that we are left with one option is a president that stays on a divided government being taken through the impeachment process by an impeachment committee. So it'll stay on, and there'll be this investigation that will go on for however it goes on, and there'll be this constant bickering and fighting within his government and within the National Assembly. Or two, you have a president who says, I will resign for stability of government, and the caretaker president takes over. Or what the DA is suggesting today, a Section 50, and you dissolve the whole National Assembly, and a new mandate is given. Advocate Hoffman, let me start with you. Is a caretaker president a temporary solution, a best one we have in those options?
I think that's in fact the worst one, Talbot, because it simply adds to the instability. We were told earlier today that the president was going to speak to the nation at 8 this evening. He hasn't spoken to the nation at 8 this evening, which means that he hasn't made up his mind yet, because if he had made up his mind, he would have been able to speak to us, and he hasn't. It's typical of President Ramaphosa to dither. He's dithered his way through the dichotomy between his New Dawn unity and his New Dawn anti-corruption reform. And because the two are mutually destructive, he has done neither. So he's now got himself in a situation where really what is going to be decided on a political level in this matter is a matter for the NEC of the ANC, which is its highest decision-making body between conferences, and that NEC is going to have to decide, as occurred with President Mbeki and as occurred with President Zuma, whether or not to recall President Ramaphosa if he chooses not to resign off his own bat. And that process is really a question of lining up the factions and seeing which faction is stronger at this time, bearing in mind that the whole complaint was carefully timed and orchestrated by Arthur Fraser to put the nation in exactly the position that we are in at the moment. This burglary at Phala Phala occurred in February 2020, and don't tell me that Arthur Fraser found out about it in June this year. He's been sitting on it and keeping it warm and hoping to use it to best advantage for those with whom he is involved. And it's really bringing the RET faction and the other factions in the ANC into open warfare. But I don't think that we should get too excited about the politics, because if the National Prosecuting Authority does its job properly, then President Ramaphosa will, in very short course, be given a charge, will be summoned in a criminal court to answer for his obvious and confessed breach or violation, actually contravention of Section 34 of PRECA, the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. Right. That section says that if you know about a theft, that involves more than 100,000 rand and you're a person in authority, you are obliged to report it to the Hawks. On his own version, he knew about it. He was a person in authority in the CC that was robbed or was burgled, had its money stolen. And he was obliged to tell the Hawks, and he admits that he didn't tell the Hawks.
Right.
He told his Presidential Protection Unit man, General Wally Roeder, about the theft, which is not compliant.
He seems to want to backtrack a little bit on that, Advocate Hoffman. I'm going to come back to you on that in a moment in terms of his response. But I want to bring in Dr. Zwelinzima and Ndevu here and get a sense from your side. I mean, if we don't get a caretaker president, if the president stays on and we cross fingers and hope the NPA is going to do what it is supposed to do, from experience, the ANC rallies around its president. We've seen what happens, for example, in the Nkandla matter. Is that, Dr. Ndevu, where we want to be?
I think the biggest issue for me here is the dwindling confidence in the president from the public point of view. And whether he stays or does not stay, that does not resolve the issue of really him taking the people of South Africa into confidence is what really happened and what he knows. To build back that trust, you would remember that when President Ramaphosa was elected was because of issues of trust within the country, and his election brought a new dawn or brought a new era, an era where there was some form of hope that people had. And this incident, I agree with my learned colleague that it might be a well-orchestrated incident, that Arthur Fraser might have remained with the information and waited for the right time to strike. It is no coincidence that all these things are happening just a few weeks before the elective conference of the ANC. So whether he stays or not, the issue of instability, the issue of lack of trust within government itself will still persist. And do we want a situation like that? Perhaps what would be best is that he be held accountable. The National Prosecuting Authority does their responsibility as soon as possible. We get to the end of this issue as soon as possible. And that would probably resolve this issue. I also do think that the president, he is his worst enemy. He could have taken the country into his confidence around these issues. Even the cancellation of the address of the nation this evening might be a lost opportunity, because you might not know what would happen between tonight and tomorrow evening when he is considering addressing the country. And I think opportunities like this are very important for the president to really seize them and give as much information as possible to the nation around what he knows. Clearly, had he started doing that early, when Arthur Fraser struck, we could have not been in this situation maybe. I don't know. But it is really, we want a president that is transparent, a president that is accountable to the nation. And that's what the nation wants.
Dr. Ndevu, one would say maybe a little bit optimistic. The president taking us, the mere public, into confidence would be a tall ask. He couldn't even take the 3-panel member looking into this matter into confidence and explain some of the basic and the simplest of things as to what actually happened on his farm. And maybe let me put that question to you again, Dr. Ndevu, now. Why do you think he failed, for example, to answer a simple thing around for example, why would a guy on Christmas Day just decide to pack a bag full of $580,000 and go to his farm and pick up buffaloes that he has never seen in his life and never actually collect them and leave them there for 2 years?
I think that is a puzzle that does not add up. Really, the story does not add up, and I think it is high time for the president to realize that it would be in his best interest to really tell the truth. It would be in his best interest to give as much information as he can, especially to a panel such as that panel that was established by Parliament, because he has been all along indicating that he would want a structure that is properly constituted to ventilate and give all the information that he has. He had an opportunity. I am not sure why he did not take that opportunity and address that particular structure. Maybe he thought because Their findings are not really binding. They have to be engaged. The parliament would have to engage on them. But in terms of the public trust deficit, I think it's growing every day. On a daily basis that there is uncertainty. We are not sure around what is happening in that scandal. People are beginning to lose trust in him. And this is indeed very sad, as I indicated, because when he started, everybody had hopes. I remember his first speech is talking about send me to Mamina. And I don't know where we have sent him. Maybe we have sent him somewhere where he's lost.
Advocate Hoffman, let me take you back to what you're saying. I mean, the president, in various instances, tried to explain, for example, why he reported to his presidential protection unit and not, for example, to proper police and have the case opened up. At some point in Parliament, I think answering the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, he said, well, I reported to him because he's a member of the police. I expected that he would then do the right thing and do what is necessary. The panel is not convinced by that answer. Tell me why that answer is not enough.
Because the president has sworn an oath of office to uphold the law of the land. The law of the land says if you know about a theft that involves more than 100,000 rand, you are obliged to report it to the Hawks. It's not difficult to understand. It's all spelt out very clearly in Section 34 of the PRECA legislation. And the president, on his own version, what he has told the panel, has not complied with the section. That puts him in contravention of the section. It gives the leadership of the National Prosecuting Authority the opportunity of asking him to explain why it is that he did not comply with the law. And if his answer is, well, he thought it was enough to tell Wally Roeder, that is an instance of ignorance of the law, which is no excuse. Might be a mitigating factor. If he resigns, it might be a mitigating factor. But he is staring down the barrel at a prison sentence of between 3 and 10 years for what he has done there. It is regarded as a serious offense because money laundering is so prevalent in South Africa. We're about to get grey listed early next year unless we get our act together around money laundering and terrorist financing. And this strange transaction when somebody arrives like Father Christmas on Christmas Day with a sack of money at Pala is really not the sort of transaction that you can regard as being clean and above board. Very, very odd circumstances of which the president speaks. And it simply undermines his credibility and the credibility of the government he leads. Why his political party would want him to continue in office in the light of the weird and wonderful explanations that he has for all of the strange things he's done, intervening with the president of Namibia, asking people to keep this whole thing treated with discretion and keep it confidential. That kind of activity is not the activity that one expects of the citizen who is the embodiment of the Constitution, as the Constitutional Court has said in litigation around Jacob Zuma. It seems that the leadership of the ANC does not learn from the mistakes that have been made in the past, and now we have a pending impeachment, which if the ANC closes ranks behind President Ramaphosa, will be a failed impeachment, just like the impeachments of Jacob Zuma failed, and we will be hobbling along in a situation where we become the polecat of the world, which is something that we sought to escape from when we became a constitutional democracy under the rule of law in a multi-party system in which openness, accountability, and responsiveness are foundational values.
Yeah.
It's not happening, and that is because of the poverty of the leadership of the country. And it's doing poor people no good at all. Poor people are the ones who are scared at the moment because they don't know what is going to happen next, and they are concerned to see more and more young people are not in employment. Inequality is higher than it has ever been. And in the rural provinces, children are dying of starvation. It's not an easy situation to be the leader, but it is something that has been brought about by the failed policies of the government that Cyril Ramaphosa leads.
Yeah.
Something needs to be done about it.
Certainly.
The opposition idea of an early election seems to be a democratic way of dealing with it, because if the people vote for Cyril Ramaphosa or for his party again, after all of the trials and tribulations that they've been through, well, that's their choice, and they must live with
But one MP advocate argues that, well, we didn't do anything wrong as all the other opposition parties, so why should we be punished and dissolve us? But besides, it's an easy way out for President Cyril Ramaphosa for him to escape accountability. Take him through the whole entire impeachment process. Let him answer exactly why Father Christmas showed up with $580,000 on his house to buy a parcel of buffaloes.
Well, you see, the trouble about brazening it out in this kind of situation is that it aggravates your sentence when you are found guilty of contravening Section 34 of PRECA. And I don't think Mr. Ramaphosa wants to do that to himself, especially when he is advised by his own legal team that there has been a failure on his part, a contravention of a criminally sanctioned activity that he was supposed to have done and did not do. All of the other aspects of the matter do not involve a crime. This does involve a crime in which the criminal is Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, those backbenchers who are saying we don't have to call a snap election because we didn't do anything wrong, must think about this. How many people are still going to be voting for the ANC in 2024 rather than in a snap election in 2023? Many of the backbenchers of the ANC are going to lose their positions in Parliament, are going to lose their parliamentary salaries and perks if they wait until 2024 for an election. Whereas if an election is held now, there is a better prospect of them still persuading people not to lose faith with the ANC. The whole trajectory of ANC support has been downward, and the longer that trajectory is allowed to run before a new election, the worse for the backbenchers of the ANC, who will not make the cut on the party list.
Dr. Ndevu, does this development augur well, for example, for our constitution and our laws in the country in terms of holding those in authority accountable? The fact that we have these laws, we have these processes and these institutions that are able to question and find a degree of prima facie evidence to impeach a president in such a way.
I think this augurs well for our law. We should pat ourselves in the back. We are always very hard on ourselves. The fact that we've got laws, we've got institutions that are able to hold those that are in authority accountable, that is one of the landmarks of a democratic system. That is one of the landmarks of pillars of a system of democracy that is working, that holds those that are in positions of authority accountable. I think in that sense, we should pat ourselves in the back. But one should not stop there. Should ensure that when people are held accountable, then there is a system of ensuring that we deal with this issue. There is consequence management. If there is a need for consequence management, people are taken through a process where we do not repeat the same thing. I think my learned friend indicated that we have gone this route with Mr. Zuma before, and we are taking the same route. It means that there are certain lessons that we actually did not learn. And it's very important that we need to learn lessons. We need to build on those lessons in ensuring that we don't repeat these mistakes in the future. Or some of the issues I identified way early, they don't need to get to the stage where we are dealing with the issues of thinking about the impeachment of the president. We know what happened with the Zuma era, that Parliament on the 6th might sit and say, but this report must be taken under review and all sorts of things. That would then defeat what we are saying, that our legal systems work, our laws are there to ensure that they protect ordinary members of society from being abused by those in authority, and also protect the use of resources the law is upheld at all times.
What grounds would the president have, if at all? I mean, he seems to think that his record of events has not been properly considered by the panel. Would that be enough grounds for him to review this report?
I don't think he needs to review it at all if he has control of his caucus, because if the ANC caucus in Parliament makes the political decision that it wants to persist with the Cyril Ramaphosa for the next 2 weeks, for the next 2 years, and beyond, if the ANC is still the majority party in 2024, then that is their political prerogative. That is what happened on Zuma's watch. He ought to have been impeached several times. I think he faced impeachment votes on about 10 occasions, and he never, ever got the necessary majority, which is a 2/3 majority, was never ever achieved. I think in the later ones, some members of the ANC were apparently voting with the opposition on the motion, and he was eventually persuaded to stand down after his team lost at Nasrec 1 in December 2017. But it's not a question of a legal consequence flowing from what the panel has or hasn't decided in the matter. If the matter goes to an impeachment vote and Ramaphosa still has control of the ANC caucus, he has enough votes in the National Assembly to see off the attempt at impeaching him, which the ATM, backed by the UDM and the EFF, has brought on this occasion.
Right.
But none of that prevents the NPA from doing its job. The National Director of Public Prosecution should be sharpening her pencil and drafting the charge sheet in the state versus Cyril Ramaphosa in the matter of the contravention of Section 34 of PRECA. And that brings the matter to a head very quickly, because the ANC's own rules say when you are charged with a serious criminal offence, and 3 to 10 years is a serious criminal offence,
completely out of time.
Then you have to step aside.
Let's leave it there. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on. Advocate Paul Hoffman and Dr. Zwelinzima Ndevu there helping us in that conversation.